Please welcome warmly Tilda Swinton. Put the fucking smartphone down. And you can't clap and filming at the same time. Okay, ready? Tilda Swinton! Et pour modérer cette rencontre, pour animer cette rencontre, please welcome Didier Jarmusch. Didier Jarmusch.
Ça va, Tilda?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. So, okay, a little secret. Just before we started, Tilda told me that the next one she'll be in Cannes. The interview will be in French.
I've been saying that to you for about 20 years. One day I will be speaking French, because I am actually not English, but Scottish. And we are Europeans, so it's time that I learned French.
We have Scottish people in the room. All right, so since we're in Cannes, let's start by festivals. You have had a movie or 2 movies or 20 movies in almost every festival in the world. So the question is pretty simple. What does it mean for you to present films at festivals and also to discover films at festivals?
You know, Didier, I would not be making films if it wasn't for festivals. Mm-hmm. I made my first feature with the beloved Derek Jarman in 1985, and in 1986 we took it, Caravaggio, to the Berlinale. And my jaw dropped, my eyes opened, my head exploded, and I saw my path. I went, well, this is my life. This is the world of international culture. It wasn't just to do with all the films I saw, and I saw many that year, as I always try to do when I go to festivals, because that's the point. But I met so many filmmakers, and I realized that this was really my tribe. I remember Chris Marker, I read once that he said, I made films because I like to travel. And I went, well, that's true of me. I wanted to meet the world, and making films was my route.
The thing is that Thierry said it before, I mean, this year is a very good year for a cinema audience and people are going back to the theater, but it wasn't true for last year, right? The industry is changing, it's transforming, people are going not less and less, but they're not going as much in cinemas as they did. So do you feel that the part of festival is even more important today than it was before? I mean, we discover here movies from all over the world, from filmmakers that may not have a big distribution afterwards. Does that make it more important today than it was?
I think this game of counting numbers is, obviously it's important. There are some people amongst us who do the counting, but the rest of us should just give it a rest, because the truth is it's not about the numbers. I mean, cinema was it's always in flux. That's the nature of what cinema is. It's an experimental medium. I mean, it started out as a sort of scientific sort of lab project. It's still a scientific lab project, and long may it stay that way. It's nothing fixed about cinema. I remember when COVID struck us all down and into our own houses, and we all reached for our own films and books. And I reached once again for the autobiography of Michael Powell, one of my great masters, and and he was born pretty much the same year as cinema, and came up through the growth of silent cinema. In fact, he first worked in the studios here in the south of France with Rex Ingram. He was sweeping out the studio. It was a boy sweeping the floor. And I remember when he's describing those years, when the sound came in, everything just stopped. Everything was in complete crisis. All the studios had to close down. The cinemas had to close down. They had no way of making the films. They had no way of projecting them. And everybody said cinema was dead. And then, of course, then colour comes in. And the same thing. Oh, shock horror. Cinema has changed. And then television comes in. And then video comes in, and then DVDs come in, and then streaming comes in. It's okay. Cinema is going nowhere. And she's so elastic and so robust and so dedicated to evolution because, and this is a radical statement these days, she is a human business. Humans make cinema, right? And humans are malleable and elastic and evolving all the time. And so as such, cinema is safe. It's just don't watch the numbers, watch the growth of the amoeba. And she'll find her space. She'll find her many different shapes. But I'm never worried. I'm particularly not worried. I have my children, I still describe them as that, but they're 28 now, and they're both very big cineasts. And I remember when my son was, who I think is in the audience, in fact I know he's in the audience, was, and is a filmmaker, was a props, standby props for many years. He and his friends, making films, huge cinema goers, went to the cinema probably 5 times a week and saw everything. It's very important, never be a snob in the cinema. See everything. And don't watch the numbers, just keep going. And you're right, we know that there is a younger generation that's looking for the good stuff of this experience of sitting in a room like this, in front of a screen like this. It's okay, it'll all come around.
Let's go back to Cannes a little, and Terry said it, that you were in the jury in 2004. The president was Quentin Tarantino, and the other jury member, if you don't mind me quoting them, Emmanuel Béard, Edwige Dandicat, Sherry Hart, Benoît Poulvord, Jerry Salzberg, Kathleen Turner, and Peter Van Dyke. And I know that rule number 1 about Cannes jury deliberation is you do not talk about Cannes jury deliberation. So how was the Cannes jury deliberation in 2004?
I tell you everything. I love juries. I've been privileged to be on several film juries, and twice in fact in Cannes, because before 2004 I was privileged to be on the jury, the Cine Fondation jury, with the magical combination of Martin Scorsese and Abbas Kiarostami. That was a masterclass, I can tell you. That was a really wonderful experience. I love juries. I find them to be democracy in action, especially the big ones, because if you have, I don't know, how many are there this year? How many people are there? 9, 10?
9.
9, okay. 9, 10, 11. It can be too many, because if it's too many, you tend to kind of go into strange sort of cartoons of yourself, and the discussion becomes a little bit fragmented. But what's beautiful about a jury is the way in which you form your own thinking with the help of others. And you find yourself, this is what's beautiful about 10 days, you find yourself changing your mind, and you find other people changing your mind. You start off coming out of the screening saying, oh, no, I couldn't take that film. And then you'll talk to one of your esteemed colleagues who are really worth listening to. And they may influence your thinking about the culture of that filmmaker, or a kind of context of the time. Maybe some historical context, that it has bears a reference to a film you didn't know. And so you end up giving it a prize. It's a beautiful experience, and I love it, and I miss it. And the other thing about being on a jury, especially in Cannes, is that you're in this kind of weird, on the one hand it's a sort of huis clos, but on the other hand, you're in this strange heaven where you're looked after, and you don't have to talk to anybody, and you just drift from screening to screening, and yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I want to come back, Thierry.
You gave the Palme d'Or to for 9/11. At the time, it was seen as a political gesture. What's your take on that idea? I want to ask you to comment on what happened on this day.
I'm very happy to talk about
so
it.
Please comment what happened.
I'm very proud of that prize. In fact, I can be very open. I was a very vocal advocate of that film getting the Palme d'Or for a very specific reason, which was a political reason, not necessarily party political, but what my argument was that at that time, and it's such a long time ago, but at that time Michael Moore was making extremely important statements that were not admissible in any other medium. He wasn't able to speak on the radio, he wasn't able to speak on television. He chose cinema to make the statements and to open up the territory that he wanted us to look at. And it was cinema that came to his aid. And for this reason, which I believe, because I believe cinema is political, this was a political choice, because it was a choice for his choice. It was a choice for the choice of cinema as a haven, as a refuge, and as a space where we all meet safely in order to have our minds changed and to develop our own thinking. And that's why I was very proud of that prize. I think it was, I stand by it.
But the thing is that I remember at the time the movie was a big success. Everybody saw it, at least in the US, where at the time. But then in November, it was a very anti-Bush movie. But then in November, George Bush won by a landslide. Isn't that a bit frustrating? That seeing that even a film this strong, even a film that this seen and this talked about at the time didn't change anything in the result of the elections?
No, this is the difference between cinema and propaganda. This is cinema, you know. Cinema is a discussion, it's a conversation. It's not, coming in with a big mallet and banging you over the head, and there's no blackmail involved. It's an opening. It's not about fixed things. It's about kind of molten spirits, and asking of the audience a molten spirit in conversation.
One more question about Cannes, but it has nothing to do with movies. I come here to watch movies. I watch 4 movies a day or something like that. I don't give a damn about glam, about fashion and everything. But when I'm in Cannes, I'm watching the red carpet, I'm watching the Monte des Marches and how people are dressed and everything. I wonder what is the importance of this part of the job for you. I know that you have to go through that in order to promote the film and everything, but is it something that matters to you?
It's like a massive wedding where every other person is a bridesmaid and everybody gets to choose their own dress. It's a fiesta. Sometimes it's a fiasco. But the glamour is not there. Let's be clear, this is the glamour. The glamour is the moment specifically in the Grand Palais with the Saint-Saëns aquarium, the dark, that's the glamour. And everything else is just fun, actually.
I agree, I get shivers every time I see that stuff. That's the thing. Okay, let's talk about you as an actress. I read somewhere that you never really intended to become an actress, that you wanted to be a writer. I got to ask you, have you made a decision yet?
I made the decision a long time ago, and I've actually never changed. I never wanted to be an actor. I still can't describe myself as an actor. I get as far as describing myself as a performer. But I know some actors, and I've read, like you all have, actors talking about acting and talking about their lives, and I read them and I hear them talking and I think you're describing a life that's not mine. I have great admiration for the measures that you take and your priorities, but they're not mine. I came from a different world, Didier. Well, in the first instance, I was always a writer, and I went to university as a writer. It's a sort of point of great embarrassment for me that I got my place at university as a writer, and then I stopped writing. And I had friends who were making plays. They were writing plays, directing them, and they became my friends. So I started performing in their plays. And then when I left, I kind of rather lazily fell into performing in the theatre, mainly because my university friends were doing it, so I just followed them. And then after 2 years, I thought, no, I'm not interested in the theatre, and I'm certainly not interested in being an actor. But I was interested in cinema, and I was looking for it. And in those days, this is a very long time ago, early 13th century, in particular 1985 in London, there were 3 kinds of cinema at the time. There was a sort of very big internationalist kind of David Lean type productions, which were so impenetrably distant, there was no way of ever getting anywhere near them. Then there was a sort of very developed cottage industry which was very much inspired by television. There was a very, very healthy television industry in the 80s, in the 70s and 80s in the UK, which was kind of at the not advantage of cinema, I think. And there was a lot of people like, Merchant Ivory making films with people in corsets, a lot about class and drawing room films, and I knew I wasn't interested in working in that milieu because, well, that's another story. And then there was this other little wild garden, which was mainly looked after and tended by the British Film Institute, and there were people like Pretty Greenaway, Sally Potter, and Derek Jarman, and they were making what could loosely be described as art films, experimental films. This was my field. So I came up through there, I started working with Derek Jarman. You can't call that acting. I just came yesterday from the Onassis Foundation in Athens, where I'm proud to say I just installed my museum show, which came from the Eye Museum in Amsterdam, which is a show all about process. And I have in it new work by 8 of my collaborators, including Derek Jarman. I managed to find new work by Derek Jarman, these little Super 8, in a drawer somewhere. They were fragments of Super 8 that my friend James Mackay, who holds the Super 8 archive, found for me. And these early scraps show, I said to someone, you see, this is why I never describe myself as an actor, because that's not acting. That's rolling around in the stones in Dungeness and finding a relationship with the camera and improvising a kind of, making shapes really, not silent. I mean, most of the films I made for the first few years of my life were silent. It's not acting, it wasn't interpretative. It was only really after he died, even though I did a couple of 35mm films with him with scripts, it was only after he died in '94 that I started to work with particularly American, David Siegel and Scott McGeehee, who I was just having lunch with upstairs, and also Spike Jonze and the Coen brothers, who wrote kind of classical scripts that needed actors to act these parts. That was a little foray for me into the world of acting, and I enjoyed it very much. But it's not my route.
The thing is that when you worked with Derek Jarman for like 10 years, when you begin your career alongside one of the boldest, most innovative artists of all time, doesn't everything else seem a little bland?
No. And that's a really good piece of news. No. There was a moment when he died when I thought it might, because I was really high and dry, because not only had I lost my best friend, but also I lost my way of working, and we developed this very sort of, as I can't remember what Thierry used. Was it mad or crazy?
Crazy.
That.
Crazy.
This crazy, completely unformulated way of working, which was very co-authored. That's the other thing. I was there as a co-author. And when he died, I thought, okay, well, what am I now? I've been working for 9 years. Am I an actor? Am I, like, what do I do? Do I play parts in other people's films? And I did think that it was going to be a tall order to continue as a performer even. But then the miracle is that I found these other families, other people who want to work in this very sort of close way of communication and building things together. So I now have a number of families. I have a family with Bong Joon-ho, who I'm going to see next week in Seoul. I have a family with Jarmusch, and I have a family with Luca Guadagnino and with Joanna Hogg, and it goes on. I'm so privileged because, you know, lightning struck once with Derek, but it seems to have gone on striking for me, and I can't even begin to count those blessings.
I want to go on a little bit on Derek, if you don't mind. I mean, watching his movies, every time we watch a movie, we see something different in it. We see something that is touching us differently. And I wonder very simply, how was it on a day-to-day basis on the set with him? I mean, how was there technique involved? Was there like total freedom? How did that work?
Do you know, Didier, this is a good day to ask me that because I'm in the process of supporting a filmmaker to put together some footage which came to light earlier this year, that it was shot on the set of Edward II by Seamus McGarvey, who's now a great DP, but was at the time a camera assistant. And this incredible behind-the-scenes footage of us making Edward II in 1990, in the fullness of time, not yet. Sorry, we have to work on it a bit more, but we're going to put together a documentary which is going to show people how it was to work in this way. And then I won't need to answer your question because you just see the documentary. It was incredibly practical, very lo-fi, very, very little money, masses of invention, absolute comradeship, and great fun, just fun. Derek always said, you go to the set every day as if you're going to a party. And as if you're throwing a party, which is actually a very good piece of advice for a director. Because, you know, a good host is not someone who, you know, comes into a room and all the guests are captive and they just go around shouting at them through a megaphone and tell them what to drink and what to eat and when to dance. A good host is someone who engenders everybody to bear a responsibility for the vibe of the party, so that everybody's changing the records and mixing the drinks and bringing food, and there's this feeling of shared responsibility, shared authorship, and that was the atmosphere of the Derek Jarman set, and that's what infected me and Sandy Powell, great costume designer, and Simon Fisher-Turner, composer. We all started on Caravaggio. We were kids. I think I was 24, and that was our first film. And Derek would say to Sandy Powell, we're doing this scene, yeah, just dress the papal clergy. You know what to do, Sandy. And he is, I don't know, like 500 pounds. And she would just go away and do it and take responsibility for that department at the age of 24. And the same with Simon Turner, who came into the project, in fact, to cast extras. He was the guy who had to go down to the East End of London and go into all the Greek cafes and pull people out of the tables because they had good faces, like Pasolini used to do. Oh, you look like a pope. You look like a prostitute. And pull these people out. And Derek knew that he was a musician and said, you know, Simon, I think you should compose the soundtrack of the film. And the same with me. I'd never been on a film set before. We're going to do this scene, Tilda, you know what to do. This is a scene where you have to open a parcel and take out a dress. Just do it, you know, and you start here and action. And I always say that he made filmmakers of all of us. I'm not saying that he necessarily made us directors, but he made us responsible for our work. And that was, you know, beyond rubies.
we're going to go through movies. I'm not going to go through all the movies because it's tedious, but I want to stop one moment on Orlando because it's an important movie, because it's kind of a breakthrough in a way, and also because it strikes me as very, very modern. I mean, all the gender questions that the movie is asking, they're still here right now. Do you see that? Do you see the modernity of the Harry Potter movie?
Well, the modernity originates, of course, with Virginia Woolf, her, phenomenal masterpiece written in 1928, in which I truly believe there's a sort of nugget of kryptonite against bigotry, because it's all about endlessness and boundarylessness and this feeling of fluidity. My fantasy about the book is that if she had written another 200 pages, that at a certain point Orlando, having started life as a boy and then become a woman, would actually become a spaniel, or maybe an oak tree, or I don't know, a chair. This feeling of evolution is all the way through that book. And so, there's something very simplistic that's very often said about both the book but also the film, that it's a sort of gender bending. And I think this is, of course, a reduction. It's not just about a man turning into a woman, fixed. It's about fixedlessness. And not just about gender, but also about class, about nationhood. And by the way, this is an immortal who lives for 400 years, so it's also about mortality. And so I think this is never, ever, this theme, this atmosphere is never going to go out of date. Let's hope it doesn't. We need this atmosphere more and more. And that film, I've seen it again fairly recently, it does look and feel like it was made this morning. It's so fresh, and I urge you, if you can find it, or if you've never seen it, it's extraordinary. And Sally Potter's achievement is really, really phenomenal, because when we made that film, it's hard to believe, but in the late 80s, when we started putting it together, nobody made costume films, really. They certainly didn't make skeptical political costume films. They made more conformist essays on class within costume dramas. But this feeling of some kind of transgressive take on history through a costume film was really new. And we knew because we had no profile at all. And I say this to any of you here who are here trying to raise money for a film. We came to Cannes trying to raise money for a film, for that film, in something like, 1989. We had no money at all. I mean, we had to we ate once a day here in Cannes, and we shared a room, 3 of us, Sally Potter, our producer, Christopher Shepherd, and me. And we got nowhere, unsurprisingly. But listen, keep going, do it. It's a great experience to do that, to come and frankly beg. It's all a good experience. It was only when we went to Russia and we were looking for locations, and we were speaking, it was just at the time when the studio system was breaking down, and we spoke to our friends there who were setting up an independent independent feature film production in St. Petersburg, and they said, "What's it about, the film?" And we said what we'd said in Cannes, which is it's about immortality and androgyny, and it's about class and internationalism and radical political situations. And people said, "Yes, but what's the story?" And we said, "Well," and we said this to our Russian counterparts, and they said, "Sounds great. We'd love to be partners." And they were the first people who put money in, rubles. It was the first international co-production, Russian, Dutch, French, Italian, British, and German, I think. Yeah, very proud of that film.
You now have 3 dinners a day, or 3 lunch a day, 3 meals a day in Cannes. Is it better?
Well, I'm fed. If I had to pay, it wouldn't be much.
I already talked about it a little bit in your answer, but transformation. It's something that is like obvious in your career that you're very interested in that. I mean, few actresses can say that they go for the transformation of a character through the movie or for the movie, as you do. How do you explain that? How do you explain that it comes so much in your career?
I think it's funny you asked that question, and I realised the answer to something I've always wondered. I always shy away from using the word character. I know that real actors talk about characters, and I never like using this word, partly because I think it's maybe an idea that comes from the theatre. But your question, Didier, makes me realise that the reason maybe is because character denotes something fixed. And I'm really not interested in a portrait of someone who's fixed. I'm particularly interested in someone on a precipice, someone who is approaching an absolutely cataclysmic change. It could be a change of gender in the case of Orlando. It could be in the case of Eric Zonker's Julia, an alcoholic who goes to kidnap and aggress a child and ends up becoming a mother somehow, magically. It could be, I don't know, it could be in David Siegel and Scott McGee's film, The Deep End, a mother who's incredibly sort of traditional and conservative and realizes that her gay son is in danger, and she starts kind of dealing with a blackmailer with dice tattooed on his neck. It's someone who goes beyond the boundaries of what they thought, where they thought they ended, and just goes, you know, like in the cartoons when you go off the cliff and your legs are going, it's that's the moment I'm really interested in. So, yeah, and I don't tend to look for the part. I know, again, real actors tend to say, I had to play this part. For me, it's the people, always the people first, and then the conversation we're having, and out of that conversation, that shared curiosity, comes the project, and out of that comes, well, what will I do in it? And sometimes there's nothing for me. I mean, I'll give you a very good example, again, born in Cannes. When Bong Joon-ho and I first met,
Here
in Cannes. He was here, one of us was presenting, I think I was presenting We Need to Talk About Kevin with Lynn Ramsey.
It was the year of the host, was it?
And he was here. No, I think he was on the jury. But anyway, he was here, which was the important bit. And I wanted to meet him, and so I invited him to breakfast in my hotel room. And this is a great moment, and again, tiny tip, ask. And if someone says no, fine, but they might say yes. And he said yes. It's like, you put down a gauntlet. And he said, yes, I'll come. And I said, this is the room. And he came, and we had breakfast, and we just became friends like that. And we said, of course we must work together. I had seen The Host and Memories of Murder, and actually Man Bites Dog as well, which is worth looking for. Even though he tries to hide it from us, you have to look for it. It's great. And he said, well, the next film I'm working on, there isn't really anything for you, but let's keep talking. So I said, fine, whenever. And then a few months later, not long, actually, a few weeks later, he called me and he said, I've been thinking, there is this one person in this script, but it's written Minister Mason, a mild-mannered man in a suit. And I said, leave it with me. And we just started to chew it. And then we had this really exquisite moment when he came to Scotland, to my house, with our friend Catherine George, costume designer, and we started playing with clothes like 8-year-olds. We just were dressing up. And we created what you saw a scrap of, the one with the shoe. That's the mild-mannered man in a suit that we created. And it all started here.
This transformation, this physical transformation, I wonder if one time you've done the movie and you watch a movie at a festival or somewhere for the first time. Is there a movie where you look at yourself and you're like, oh, did that happen? Were you kind of surprised by the...
I was just, crouching down here watching this show reel going, oh my God. I mean, I've forgotten a lot of it. It's a rondelay. But you can only make these shapes when you're in good company. You can't go out by yourself and, you know, it's when Wes Anderson says to you, in this film, I want you to play a woman in her 90s. And you say, wouldn't it be cheaper to get an amazing film star in her 90s? And he says, I want you to do it. And I say, it's going to cost a lot of money in prosthetics. And he says, let's do it. I mean, I do it with him because I love him. He's a friend of mine. You know, you wouldn't do it with everybody because it may not work. But there's this strand of complicity and playfulness and shared curiosity to see. Again, I talked earlier about it's an experimental medium, this. It's like we're in a laboratory seeing, is it going to work? I worked with Luca Guadagnino many times, and the last film we made together, Suspiria. I mean, it's now not a secret, but I was playing the dance, the director of the dance school. But there's one man in the story who's the psychiatrist, and he said, well, you know, my dream is that the only people in the film are women. They're all played by women, including the man. Now, you're not going to say, I wouldn't say let's do it if it's not Luca, you know, but why not?
Well, that's the thing that you talked about that before, so the collaboration are very important for you. You said it. What do they allow? What do they let you? Do they let you go deeper into the work that you want to do with the characters, or is a conversation more important with the director? How does that evolve when you work with Jim Jarmusch, Luca Guadagnino, Anderson, Bong Joon-ho, even Pedro?
Well, it's completely, as they say, consensual. It's completely shared. The license, who allows who, is absolutely shared. You're in it together. You're building something together, and yeah. I mean, Jim Jarmusch, I'd worked with him several times when he came to me and said, so the next one is going to be a zombie film, and I've written a part for you. She's called Zelda Winston, and she's a Scottish samurai sword-wielding funeral director who gets sucked up at the end into a spaceship. I mean, it's... yeah. What do you do? I mean, it is children in a sandpit. It really is. It's children. I always say when I remember my children who used to do these plays, we used to call them John Badger productions, and they would do these plays at the end of the bed for us when they were 6. And somebody's an old lady and somebody else is a dog. And it's no more complicated than that. It's so simple. It's just, first of all, amusing yourself. And that will be infectious, and one hopes amuse the people in the bed.
Well, there's something called talent too, but
curiosity is much more important than talent every time. I'm not even sure what talent means, but I think curiosity cannot be overestimated.
You talked about Jim Jarmusch. If I may go a little bit personal here, one of my favorite movies of yours is Only Lovers Left Alive. Do you like Only Lovers Left Alive?
Yes.
Okay. You probably play the coolest vampire ever in cinema. Is making a Jim Jarmusch movie as cool as watching a Jim Jarmusch movie?
It is, and for similar sorts of reasons. So I realized recently that for the first, I would say maybe 12, 15 years of my life, the filmmakers I worked with were all painters. Jim Jarmusch is a musician. And working with him is a little bit like working with him as a musician. You're in a band together. He moves, and literally moves, but he also moves through the day like a musician. You wake up very late, you shoot very late. He is a vampire. He loves being in the wee small hours, as we say in Scotland. And he does, what I would say I really, it's not that I've learned from him, but he encourages it in me. Just as the same with Derek. It's not so much that Derek taught us things, it's just that he encouraged things that were within us already. Was this capacity to trust your own rhythm and not panic, and not rush, and not take on the pressures from outside, and just wait for the vibe and wait for the music to come up. So practically speaking, when you're shooting a film, this is, it's a piece of work because you might be on a set with not that many people, but let's say 60, which is a lot of people. And it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and Jim is waiting for the scene. He's rewriting it, probably. He's asking you to say the line again, and he goes, no, oh man. Rewriting it again. And you just keep chewing it away together, and trying it out, and trying it out. It's like jamming, I think, not speaking as a musician, but being around many musicians all my life. It's finding the riff, finding the vibe, and not stopping until you do. Not going, oh, that's okay. Let's all go to bed and have a good night's sleep. Yeah, he's a very instinctive, he's an artist, and he works as someone, maybe this is interesting about the people who are painters, who know what it is to work alone. To carry that energy with you onto a film set is really difficult because of all the pressures, but it's a real blessing because it means you are connected to what you know is right. And so you just keep going until the bell rings and it says, okay, we got it.
Another of your collaborators is Pedro Almodóvar. Wow, that's big names.
He was also at lunch just now.
Yeah, the thing is that there's something with Pedro's movies that he directs actresses, as actresses, like in a very special way. There is something, they're all very different, but they all play with the Almodóvar touch, if I may say so. You and Julian in The Room Next Door, it's exactly that. It's you, but it's you in a Pedro's movie. How does that work for the actresses? What does he have that no one else do?
I always say Pedro writes in high heels. When we made both the Room Next Door and the short that I made with him before, The Human Voice, but particularly The Room Next Door, which was the first original script in English that he'd written. And I remember when it was first shown, a lot of Anglophone people were quite surprised. They sort of went, oh, in the past we've read the subtitles and there's always been a little slack, sort of, okay, maybe the subtitles make it feel a little bit, what's the right word? Just a bit presented. And now we hear the English, we realize that it's there in the English too. And that's exactly how he writes, for a very good reason, because he is writing poetry, essentially. He's writing fairy stories. He's not a naturalist. He's not dealing with a kind of real life. He's working in an elevated atmosphere, and the thing that I found so thrilling in my life about working with Pedro is that he's my most recent collaborator of all my families, and by the time I worked with him, and it's really not that long ago, I think it was 2020 that we made The Human Voice, I was such a die-hard admirer of his work. I first saw Women on the Verge of the Nervous Breakdown was the first international success. It was the first film that I saw, anyway, when I left university, and then I saw everything I could. And his work he's such a master. He's a proper master because he's created a thing that wouldn't exist without him, which is the world, the the world of Almodóvar. That is a thing. And we all know what it looks like, what it smells like, what it tastes like, what it sounds like. And yes, I feel that his oeuvre, you know, in 100 years' time, his oeuvre is like a big book, and each film is a chapter. They're all related to him. They all come out of him, and they're all related to him. So when you're an admirer who also has some kind of dabbles as a performer and has some kind of fantasy about maybe being in his frame, it's very daunting, especially if you look like me and you're not Spanish and you haven't got any curves and there's nobody ginger or white in his films. And I did say to him, I met him here, and I had the nerve a few years ago to say to him, listen, I will learn Spanish. Like I said, I'll learn French. I'll learn Spanish, or I will be a mute. But please, one day. And he laughed, and I thought, okay, well, I tried. And then he sent me the human voice, and it was quite daunting, because when you know that world so well, but from the outside, and you worship it, to step into it it's a different kind of task. And it's not the same kind of collaboration that I've described before. We're not co-authoring this. We are interpreting. And all of us, it's true also of my Spanish sisters and brothers, that we all are serving Pedro's vision and his script. So it's a dance, but it's really an interesting one, and I would go back and back and back. You learn, I mean, he's a very classical filmmaker. He knows exactly it's not even what he's doing, it's what he's done. He doesn't sleep when you're shooting, and he comes to the set, having watched the rushes over and over again, and he tells you, right, the first scene we're going to do is the scene when you're sitting on the stage with Didier, and I'll tell you what you're going to do. You're going to, at one point, get a glass and you're going to drink, and then you're going to stand on a chair and you're going to run out of the room. And he tells you exactly what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it. And so the trick is to try and make those very explicit instructions feel natural. It's a very particular task. There are a few directors that I've worked with who have seen the film already, and then he's just reporting back. It's like he just came from the cinema, and he says, I've seen that scene, and in that scene you do this, and you go, okay, and you do it.
Well, I think people will kill me in this room if I don't talk about this one. We need to talk about Kevin. This is a movie that kind of marked a generation. This is something that Lynn Ramsey's movie is very important. How do you explain that? How do you explain that it became such a kind of a point in pop culture?
Well, again, it's a really phenomenal book, and I urge anybody who has a mind to read it, because the book, of course, is one of the achievements of the film. When you've read the book, is the grace of Lynn's adaptation, because she just filleted, took out very particularly the mother's view. For those who don't know, this is the story of a woman whose son becomes not serial killer, perpetrates a high school massacre in America. And it's about being a mother and bearing that, and trying to piece together how her responsibility might figure in her own consciousness. I mean, Lynn Ramsey is a visionary. The fact that she found this material and we developed it together, I'm very proud of my work with her as a producer on it, and she kind of brought it into harbour in the way in which she did. Huge achievement. It's about something. I mean, I had this great good fortune when I had my children, my twins, of being incredibly happy immediately that they were there. But I remember this little moment in my mind that I was relieved that I was so happy. And I thought, why was there ever a possibility that you wouldn't be so happy? And this was the seed of this film, that it is possible, for whatever reason, to not have that bond from a very early age with a child. And it's something that women find very difficult to talk about. And and both women and men find very difficult to hear. But it's incredibly important that we talk about all these things that are difficult to talk about and difficult to hear. And this is the place to do it, because we can all sit in the quiet and not argue back, keep our mouths shut, listen, and breathe it in.
There's a scene in the film, I love this film, but there's one scene when you push a crowd in the street and you're becoming crazy and something happens in your mind and you're like, what am I doing here? And we understand that by looking at your eyes. This is something that is very remarkable to do, so I wonder, how did you do it?
I don't really know. Imagination. I mean, anyone who's been blessed with even looking after a small baby will know the moment, however much you love them, when they cry a lot and you want to put them near to a drill so you can't hear them crying. It happens. We're all human and we have limits. And I think keying into those limits and imagining those limits, being constantly pushed, and yet at the same time, for whatever reason, this woman cannot refresh herself. She doesn't have that love that will refresh you. Next morning, you look at the baby and you go, oh, I love you so much, I'll sit up all night with you. She doesn't have that. She doesn't have that mechanism, and that's torture, must be torture.
Well, you play that very well, madame. This is something that we talked about the collaboration with artists, we talked about the independent movie, but let's not forget that you've been an archangel in Constantine, you've been the ancient one in the Marvel movie, you've been a witch in the Narnias. I wonder, doing the big movies, doing the mainstream movie, even doing the blockbusters, what do you bring from the independent world? What do you bring from your works with the author to those movies?
When you mentioned the word mainstream, I remember we always used to say with Derek Jarman that, people used to talk about mainstream and that we were some kind of, third-class citizens. And we would say, one man's mainstream is another person's dirty little gutter. I mean, we were the mainstream for us. And that's why I say that when I think of my son and his generation, seeing everything, don't be snobs, never be a snob in the cinema, see everything. The thing that drew me to those projects, and I do find it amusing that in my very, very long career of several hundred years, I have only made, on one hand I can count the studio pictures that I've made. Actually, it's those fingers, I think. But they, of course, are possibly the ones that more people have seen than seen Derek Jarman, 7 films with Derek Jarman, or Apichatpong where it's ethical, or whatever. But maybe the fans of Marvel will go and find Apichatpong, that's what we hope.
We'll see Memoria, yes.
That's what we want. The thing that always took me there, with a very small travelling bag, with the people, always, it's the same thing. And funnily enough, those particular films that I made, first of all, Constantine with Francis Lawrence, first of all, I loved him, very important. And secondly, he presented it to me with accuracy as a very experimental film. There are things in that film that were being tried for the first time, and hard to imagine, but we had shards of glass digitally projected coming down from the sky, and he said, believe it or not, this is going to happen. And we all went, oh, really? Amazing. And it did. And we were all in a state of nerdy grace on that film. And then again, the nerd in me, when I met Andrew Abrams, who was making the Narnia film, he'd only made animated films before, and he said, come and help me, I don't know how to make a feature film with humans, and I wanted to make it as analog as possible, and I don't want to have, crowds of CG animals. I said, I'm in, I want to see how to do this too. So it's the geek in me always that goes into these projects, and it's the people, the relationship. And also, I have to say, I love all the tech. I love the tech of green screen. It really fascinates me. It reminds me of when we made Pet Shop Boys videos with Derek Jarman in the 80s. It makes me think of Norman McLaren. It's all substance.
You need your imagination.
You need your imagination. But there are limits, as long as it's human imagination. Yeah.
You know what? I was about to rebound on that in your first answer, but I'm going to do it now. I don't know if you saw that, but the Academy brought a new rules for the Oscars, and they are saying that now you have to prove that you're a human person to get an Oscar, and you have to prove that a script is written by a human person. It feels like an episode of Black Mirror. This is something that is, it's crazy. I mean, how do you, actors, how do you, on your side of the street, see what we have to do in order to counter the danger of AI?
I have to stop you because the thing I can't get past is you saying, yes, you have to prove that your script's not written by AI. I understand that. But what you said is you have to prove that you are a human.
Yeah, you have to prove that it's a human that's
I mean, I feel this should be the byline for the Festival of Cannes. all cultural festivals, all cultural endeavours. Let's prove that we're humans. That's what we're here to do. It's our task to prove that we're human, and also to prove that, you know, we can improve on AI, which, by the way, is not going to be hard. We just have to put our minds to it. But how do you prove that you're human?
I don't know. Maybe you call them.
Wow.
I swear to you, the line is you have to prove you're human.
Yeah.
This is you proved you are human in a lot of your movies, and even on the bad way of what being a human is. I mean, I'm talking about your part in Michael Clayton, your Oscar, a wonderful, wonderful performance, a very scary woman. How do you explain the success of her? Is it because it was a kind of an image of what being cynical means?
I love that film so much. That again is Tony Gilroy. He was, I mentioned before, when I started to work with particularly American writers, the Coen brothers, and David and Scott, and Tony. That script was really, like, par excellence, the most classical Hollywood film script. I mean, old Hollywood film, classical Hollywood, like Hollywood from the 70s film script that I had ever seen. And the way he writes people, again, I don't use the word characters, is he did this thing which you would imagine, if there are writers here, you would imagine this is something that writers always do, but they really don't. All the voices in Tony Gilroy's scripts are different from one another, so you'll have a big argument between the person I'm playing and the person that George Clooney's playing, and we speak in different cadences. We are actually coming in at different angles, which is why it's such a good argument, because it's the kind of argument that humans have. And this script was phenomenal. This woman I found so important because she is someone who believes she is the hero. And she's not just following orders, she's finessing her own impulses and making these terrifying decisions. There's an amazing scene in that film when she's asking an assassin, essentially, to carry out a killing. And she never actually says the words. There's one line which is something like, "And what about the thing that I'm not asking you about?" It's something like that. And he, of course, gets the gist. But again, I'm making this gesture with it's like music. It's like, it's energy. And it's about the kind of, and I'm going to use a very heavy word, the kind of evil that we have to really, really think about now. People doing things without taking any responsibility for them, not even naming it to themselves, not even saying I was just following orders, not even getting any orders, just following the wind and disappearing. It's so dangerous and so elusive, and I think that's why that portrait is meaningful to people. She looks like someone who is a bit of a mess. You know, she's sweating in the bathroom and she's clearly, you know, not happy with her body, and she's, you know, a bit sort of constructed. But her lack of ethical basis is really terrifying. And yeah, I'm very, very proud that Tony asked me to help him to make it. So
Did you check out this Star Wars series?
yes, my son worked on it. My son was a standby props on it.
It's fantastic. Anyway, I'm going to open the floor to questioning in a minute, but before that, one last question for you, and this is one aspect of your work that I love, is the global aspect, the international aspect. I mean, you talked about David Chapong, and Pedro, and Bong Joon-ho, yeah, of course. How is it important for you to share international stories, to work with people from everywhere?
Well, back to the very beginning, back to your first question about festivals, Didier. This is my privilege, not as a filmmaker, but as someone who really believes that cinema is our best resource for understanding, and we can to travel the world as you're able to do. You know, I'm sad I'm only here for a couple of days. I'm going to see as many films as I can, but I know when you sit in a room like this or the room next door, and you're, where are we going now? We're going to Tehran, fabulous. Where are we going next? We're going to Baghdad. We're going to Taipei. It's the most empowering experience, I think, and so to be able to make films around the world as well as sit in the cinema and watch them is really my privilege.
All right, your turn. Monsieur. Oh, you can scream your question. Go for it.
Thank you so much, Tilda, for this very interesting chat. As a writer, and I'm a writer, I'm curious what you think are the stories that you'd love to share with everybody. And we're seeing, so much emphasis, obviously, in money. And I know your world is probably far from the commercial world and what's being done in the States, Marvel, etc., which is something very difficult, and the US has to get its act together and really.
Oh, I love that question. For many, many years, for the first, I suppose, maybe 10 or 15 years of my life, people would say to me, have you ever thought of doing comedy? And I would go, well, I thought I was doing comedy all the time. I think Orlando is hilarious, by the way. I don't know, I'm working with my pals. I happen to know Jermaine Clement very well, so for me to be in What We Do in the Shadows was a very easy thing. I loved that show from the beginning, and when they asked me to go and be a vampire in it, that was a happy day. It's, Marianne Faithfull, I'm proud to say, was, a beloved friend of mine, and when Jane and Ian were putting together their film, it was pure joy to take part. The world of art, of music, it's my world, and but it's all got a kind of lightness to it. I refer you back to my example of the children doing the play at the end of the bed. It's just dressing up and playing, and you're right. I think that maybe it's to do with my features, or maybe it's to do with the fact that for the first 10 years or so, when I was in sort of public position, I just was terrified out of my wits, and I just looked like that. And everybody thought I've got these straight features, and I'm not one for that. And they just thought that I was super serious. I am serious, but guess what? You can actually be serious and have a laugh as well. And I don't know, I think it amused me that people asked me if I ever thought of doing comedy, because I felt like I was.
And forgive the second question, one David.
Know what's coming next, and enjoys that experience. I think that going personal is always a good way to start, and that can mean, ending up on the top of a medieval mountain with a dragon can still be a personal story. And feeling safe that there is an audience out there. The audience, that's why I say I'm never worried about cinema as long as the audience. The worst thing that can happen is for an audience to get bored and, more importantly, tired, fatigued. We all know, I'm not even going to, spell it out, what it is to go to the pictures and go, I've seen this film 4 times before and I know exactly what's happening, and it was really expensive to get in. And I had to drive here or get a train ticket, and I had supper, and it's not worth it. That's what we have to watch out for. And of course, some people will then say, well, you know what? I'll just stay at home and look at my laptop on the end of my bed instead. And a lot of us would love to do that, to look at the, 12 decades of film archive that we can now dream up, which is a wonderful thing about technology. But we need to inspire people into this environment and to know that they can have confidence in the adventure of it, and whatever that takes, whatever that means. And if it means something for you, just to have the faith that it will translate, it will mean something to others, and try to drown out all the executives who tell you otherwise. Does that make sense?
Are you working on something right now?
I'm now celebrating my second year of not making a feature film. It's a huge achievement. I've been working on other projects. I've been making my show and writing, but I am working with Bong. Again, we're making 2 films currently, and also developing I've got some seeds in the ground, which will take a long time, as they always do, to come up, but they're coming. Slowly, slowly, slowly.
All right, the lady with the white jacket here.
Thanks a lot for this lovely conversation. I really enjoyed it. So, Tilda, you're such an inspiring person and a big, huge cineast. And you brought so many unique, unconventional characters to the screen. And so I would like to know, if you could insert yourself into any iconic film, maybe film of the past, you weren't actually part of, which one would you choose and why? Thank you.
I know the answer to this. Any one of the films made by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. Just, in the background in the red shoes, or in the heaven scene in the Matter of Life and Death, or of course my favourite film of all time, probably on a ferry in I Know Where I'm Going. Yeah, but I am there anyway because I know those films back to front.
Gentleman who's hat there. Now you.
Yeah, I can stand. Hello. It's a great pleasure having you here, and it's a great pleasure that just a few days ago we had you in my country, in Greece. You have been many times, and I love it. I would like to address a question about the way that you, as a performer, as an actress, you are connecting yourself with silence inside each role. This is very important. And then again, this silence, how much to say to all of us nowadays in a period where war and all these kind of crimes are coming against us, against our dignity, against our popularity, against our understanding ourselves as free people. Please give me some answers.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Well, silence in terms of as I said earlier, in terms of my film origins, it's really my happy place. Although I would maybe go further and to say less silence than quietness. I think quietness now is something I value more. It's possible to be quiet and communicative. I believe. It's possible to be more communicative with quietness, and it's possible to share quietness. Just in terms of being in the world, to listen. We are in an atmosphere, in an amniotic fluid right now, where there is, we are on a raft, those of us who are fortunate to be on the raft, on a really stormy sea. And as I say in my notes for radical living, we have to make friends with chaos, and we have to let things shake. And if we do that, then we can find a kind of quietness, and out of the quietness we will know what we need to say, what will be useful. I think it's really all about trying to find a way of being useful, which might take a little time, but it will certainly take some quietness. In terms of performance, as I say, I started working silent. I think that speaking in cinema is a very meticulous game, because you have to write, whether you're Pedro Almodóvar or Tony Gilroy or my colleague here, you have to adopt code of a certain kind. And I remember, when we work with my friend Joanna Hogg, we improvise all our dialogue, which means that you have to start from a state of quietness in order for the words to rise up inside you. I think that's a little lesson for me. It's like a sort of tool to learn how I want to be in life. And again, I'm not sure that any of this makes any sense to anybody, but it's just coming out of me. I think quietness is really important, and it's not to be mistaken as an absence of feeling or a disconnection. In fact, in many ways, the best way to find connection is to go quiet, and then you will find a way of contributing and being of use.
Thank you so much.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
That made a lot of sense, Tilda, don't worry.
Thank you.
I am an actress I was born in Belgium and I live in London, and I was wondering, the reason why I wanted to be part of this world was for the art of the storytelling and the ability to connect to people all over the world and find that resemblance that we all have of being alive and what it is to be human in that purity. But I found that as starting and trying to get a role and break in a way, I've often found that the treatment is actually the opposite of what, to me, the industry is about. To me, the art is about the love and the connection, and I've found that the treatment has often been about, who are you? You're not useful yet. Go away. And it has almost taken my love and my heart away from what I have in me that I want to be able to give. And I've struggled with battling that, and I've wondered if you experienced that as an actor and how to fight that and keep the love in your heart going. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I want to say you're in the golden spot, because you are noticing all of this, and you know what you have to do. You have to make your own work. Okay. You just have to, it's useful, it's so important to know what you don't want. So all this onslaught of stuff that's disappointing you and that's, hurting your heart, you have to be grateful for it, say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I see, I'm going to do better than this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to do better. And look out, find fellows, maybe somebody else writes it for you, maybe you don't write it, maybe you improvise it, maybe you write it yourself, but you fill in what is absent for you. This is a blessing for you, this disappointment. I'm happy for you, and for you to have this experience young is really grace.
Thank you so much.
And that's what in answer to your first part of the question, this was my good fortune to come into this sea, both with Derek Jarman particularly, but also working collectively.
Mm-hmm.
It meant that by the time I did read scripts that disappointed me, they didn't kill my heart, because I knew there was an alternative. I knew that there was a way out, and I had some confidence in that. So yeah, hooray, congratulations, I toast you.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, the gentleman with the bearded long hair here.
Tilda, congratulations on being a future president of the jury of the Canton. There's a microphone over there, I'll just speak loudly. One of the gifts of your acting is you occasionally play evil characters that don't even realize they're evil, and you play funny characters that don't realize they're being funny. I'm wondering if you could talk about roles like in Broken English, or even in What We Do in the Shadows, exploring this notion, your work with people who are musicians or comedians. Many people think of you as this very serious, this very austere person, but I love when you bring moments of levity, even in moments of tragedy.
Oh, I love that question. You know, for many, many years, for the first, I suppose, maybe 10 or 15 years of my life, people would say to me, have you ever thought of doing comedy? And I would go, I thought I was doing comedy all the time. I think Orlando is hilarious, by the way. I don't know, I'm working with my pals. I happen to know Jermaine Clement very well, so for me to be in What We Do in the Shadows was a very easy thing. I loved that show from the beginning, and when they asked me to go and be a vampire in it, I mean, that was a happy day. It's, Marianne Faithfull, I'm proud to say, was, a beloved friend of mine, and when Jane and Ian were putting together their film, it was pure joy to take part. The world of art, of music, it's my world, and but it's all got a kind of lightness to it. I refer you back to my example of the children doing the play at the end of the bed. It's just dressing up and playing, and you're right, I think that maybe it's to do with my features, or maybe it's to do with the fact that for the first 10 years or so, when I was in a sort of public position, I just was terrified out of my wits, and I just looked like that. And everybody thought I've got these straight features, and I'm not one for that. And they just thought that I was super serious. I am serious, but guess what? You can actually be serious and have a laugh as well. And I don't know, I think it amused me that people asked me if I ever thought of doing comedy, because I felt like I was.
And for Kim's second question, one David Bowie story that would surprise you.
Oh, surprise you. I don't know whether it would surprise you, but I hope it will nourish you. Just that he was so happy. He was such a happy person. And that, I think you could get that impression, but it doesn't, it bears repeating. He was curious, and he was full of energy, and we became very close correspondents, email correspondents, right up until the end. And I can share that he wouldn't mind me telling you that in the last weeks he was writing, so much music, so much music I want to do, and it was of course painful, but at the same time it was so wonderful. And as we know, he kept going beyond literary, and continues. What else would surprise you? Well, I don't know that anything would surprise you. I can just endorse he was really saucy and silly, and we used to giggle about English comedy that he missed. and we talked a lot about the vagaries of living in America for him as an Englishman in New York. Yeah, no, he was a pure delight, and he is a real jewel for me in my life.
One more question. Okay, the lady over there. Yes, you. No pressure, it's the last one.
Thank you very much for being here. This has been a very interesting conversation. What would you say to an inspiring filmmaker, someone who is eventually going to have to direct actors, who's going to have to tell a bunch of humans what to do, what to say, and how to do it? What are the lessons from your career working with them?
And they went, oh, we get it. We get it. These are human beings who are in a very vulnerable position. And as human beings, you know, we're all shy, I believe. I'm shy. I wear my shyness on my sleeve. I find it difficult to fake it. But some people deal with their shyness by being incredibly bombastic and grand and know-it-all. And some people by being very aggressive and resistant. And you have to dig deep on the compassion, and you have to understand how to connect the human, and with patience and understanding, and find a way of not activating that coping mechanism. And it's, you know, a piece of work, and everybody will be different. I would say in the first instance, try not to get into a situation until you know that person enough. You've had a cup of coffee with them, you like them, you have a connection with them, you want to see them on the set. You might even say to them things like, how are you with late nights? They may say, I get really grumpy after 6, and you may know that you're going to have to shoot night shoots. You may not pass them, because it may not be worth it to you, because you may have such a low budget that you cannot waste the time on 15 takes if that person is being obstructive. These are the sorts of calculations that you need to make. But contact the human, and then that will sustain you both. And then they will trust you. You have to engender trust, which of course, and this is my story, I spend my life working with people for decades. This is one of the reasons, because I trust them, we trust each other, we know each other, we love each other. We can make fools of ourselves in front of each other. And that's our best work, actually. Fools we make of each other. And that's the dream, but you have to start somewhere. So just start a relationship, and it will not fail you, and good luck.
Lisa, mais avoir merci pour cette interview. Merci beaucoup. Tilda Swinton, mesdames et messieurs.
Et Didier Alou.